10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
1 second, please.
Please, Mr. Saravah, I don't wanna. Please don't shoot me into Baldur's Gate. Please, Mr. Saravah, I don't wanna. Please don't shoot me into Baldur's Gate. I sweat when they call me Gorian's Horde. Magic missiles and a flaming sword. Gathering parties and adventures will go. Possessed by bandits and their 1,000 arrows. And also saith the wise Orlando.
Welcome back to Mages and Murder Dads. This is episode 64. Today we are talking about our impressions of famous political figures.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, we're missing the debate tonight to record this.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah, and I don't know if you heard the new formatting rules, but now Jill Stein, of course, as we all know, will be encased in plexiglass, 6 feet off the ground, and her challenger, the Libertarian candidate, will be sitting in like one of those carnival dunk tanks.
Mm-hmm.
And in lieu of questions, Jill Stein will get 74 softballs.
No, I heard that Stein, this is part of the disagreement that the parties, of course, always have, the minor disagreements about the setup for these things. But I heard that Stein would be in the plexiglass container and there would be a fan with money. Kind of flying around, and there would be a score associated with how much of that she could grab in her hands. Is that are they going ahead with that? I didn't.
They've made it hybrid. The score will be kind of like an average of the total value of the little money, which I don't even think it's like real money. They're kind of like the Fed's it's kind of monopoly money. Yeah,
I see. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They thought it was a little too gross during these trying times to have actual money be in the tank.
I mean, but that's something you can say about the Stein presidency. Like the presidency always is, they're deeply respectful of the American people.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, but that's actually not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about the Baldur's Gate games, and we're talking about our impressions of Baldur's Gate 3, which, we recorded a couple episodes basically over this past summer. We've, taken a long break from doing full games here to kind of wait for Baldur's Gate 3 and maybe Disco Elysium. We'll talk about that probably at the end of this episode. But it's out. The game exists. It's been out for, 3 weeks or so? Something like that? A little more than 3 weeks. And
you could almost say that this is our first impressions, but the term first impressions tends to connote like a certain level of like a cursory, glance. But I think combined, we've probably put 70 hours into this thing.
Yeah. How many hours do you have? In it?
Oh, I've got 70. I know you've got like 25.
Yeah, I've got something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Weirdly enough, it didn't count all of my time, like in Steam.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've got 20 some odd hours in the thing. And played through the whole thing. I've written a long piece for Polygon. I wrote the Polygon review of it, of the whole vibe of the thing and what it's doing and how it's doing it. And you've just played the whole entire early access portion of this game. It's an early access. This is the first act of the game. You've played it through 2 times.
2 complete times. I'm on my... I did a third, like a half, to do a proof of concept, which the proof of concept was a successful one, and now I've started a fourth to make some different decisions.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are not going to want to play this game when we...
Here's the thing, and this is... we'll start this with a confession.
Okay. You've never played one of these games. You've been faking it the whole time.
The footage I just sent as like a very obscure YouTuber that's been like working through, and I had to just like the whole Balthazar's turn to a solo character was just purely because the footage that person decided to do. No, I'll make a confession that I have been, since Baldur's Gate 3 got announced and some of the first footage started coming out and they started pushing it harder, I've been saying, oh yeah, that looks good. That looks fun. But there was a part of me that was deeply afraid, deeply wary of the fact that it was turn-based. And as you know, the last game we played on this show, I had such a bad time that it like turned me off of video games, period, for a year.
Yeah.
I did not play a video game after Torment: Tides of Numenera for a solid calendar year.
Yeah.
And so that game was also turn-based. So when I saw this, I was like, oh my God. This
Sometimes out of the corner of your eye, you would see Dragon Quest, and you would say, "Not today, Satan."
No,
I'm not doing that. Final Fantasy Tactics, get out of here.
Yeah,
all turn-based systems were bad.
So going into this, I was kind of like, I'm going to give this, an honest shot. I will have to say, I am pleasantly surprised that it is the case that after playing this, I am excited to play this when it comes out. I am like excited. I will be excited to like experience this when it comes out. Is that the case with you? Are you more or less excited to play this when it comes out than before you ever played it?
This game has to go a lot of places before I think I will be completely happy with it. And this is something that I say in my Polygon article. This is something that I'm sure we'll talk about in more granularity as we go. But as a general, like you were saying, kind of big picture statement, I really think that 5th edition D&D, and this is something that people have heard me say 1,000 times across a number of different things that we've recorded, but I think that 5th edition D&D by the book is clunky. And I think that it can be real slow. I think that there are some assumptions in the DNA of D&D that maybe don't make for the best potential role-playing experience. This game is a gamified version of 5th edition D&D, and so I feel like the worst parts of it, right, the places where it needs to be smoothed out for me are places where it is being a little too faithful to some tabletop rules that, for the most part, I think many people kind of allied in their actual play anyway.
Yeah.
So that's where it is. I mean, I think it is, there's some bumps in the road here, but I like, as far as if we rephrase the question slightly, is this a good role-playing game? Yeah, I think it is. I think it's fun. I enjoyed my time with it. It would probably have been better if I hadn't had to play it so quickly. I probably would have had a little bit more patience for some of the stuff. But overall, yeah, I think it's a cool game. I'm not mad about it. I'm not... I think they can take their time,
You uninstalled it, too, after you put in this review.
I did uninstall it, too, but because, I don't want to burn out on the thing. Like, I didn't uninstall it because, like, screw this thing, right? But I don't want to burn out on it, so I don't really want to play it anymore other than what I played for the review. I'm happy to talk about it or whatever, but I'm willing to wait until the next piece comes out, and then I'll play it again, or I'll wait till the full game is out. I think that playing it regularly through the whole early access process can have one of two effects. It can either make you love the thing and be very forgiving of some of the rough patches because you've seen it in an even rougher state, or it can make you sick of the thing.
Yeah,
and I think both would be bad for my enjoyment of the video game.
Yeah,
and talking about it. So yeah, and also it's like an 80 gigabyte install. I have like other shit I need to do with this computer.
It's true. No, I would say the only I've replayed it a couple times for a few reasons, and we're gonna address some questions. We're gonna try to answer some questions that we solicited from our Discord that I think are gonna cover like a nice cross section of kind of the aspects of this game, the way that you can examine it. I'm excited to do that, but kind of stealing one question's thunder a little bit. I did try to play this game solo, Balthazar style, because I do think it would be fun to try to replicate that for this game in the same way that I did the other Baldur's Gate games. It is a very different game to do that versus doing it with a party. So that explains some of the repetition on my part. But yeah, no, I'm actually with you. I think that once I kind of do the little experiment that I want to do, with the game. The next one, I'm probably going to drop it until it'd have to be a pretty major patch for me to pick it up again. They need to add some real like extra classes or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was something too that you and I were talking pretty regularly over Discord when we were playing it, and we even like screen shared one night to play through part of it and to talk about the game. And that was something that we kind of figured out pretty quickly, is that, yeah, a solo experience of the game is very different. And it seems like AI is a little bit more exploitable when you're doing a solo game. It seems, obviously, a lot of narrative things are very different because your party members can impact narrative in the game. And you had do you want to talk about your glitch that you experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and kind of ask the question, so we'll get it out of the way. James asked this question in the Discord. How much does the game right now feel built/accommodating for the Balthazar emoji style, no companion play? Are you losing a lot by doing that? And do you think that is going to change as it is updated? So the very first thing I did with this game is an attempt to kind of recreate Balthazar, my previous character. And unfortunately, there's no half-orc and there's no barbarian. The closest thing statistically to what I think that they're going to do with a half-orc is a dwarf right now with strength and constitution bonuses. So I made a dwarf fighter, right? I have no idea how this bug manifested. It seems very bizarre, and I reported the bug to the forums, which, by the way, really difficult to report these bugs. You're either posting on like the Steam forums, or you have to like register for Larian specific forums and then make a post there.
Excellent.
There should be a button with like a field. I have no idea why it's not that way, but I was invulnerable to any ranged attack that targeted AC. At first I thought it was just bows and arrows, but it extends to other ranged attacks that target AC. Vicious Mockery doesn't target AC, so Vicious Mockery hits. That's against Wisdom, right? Fireball doesn't target AC, that's like a dex saving throw. But certain spells do target AC. Invulnerable. There's not even a miss like dialogue that pops up. There's no hit. It just, an animation happens. So my first character, I played the entire game with this kind of special ability, this superpower. Mostly because I just wanted to kind of like really experience a lot of the game kind of on an easy mode, as it were. And yeah, that it would have definitely, especially when some encounters are just me basically soloing things one at a time as everyone else like flails at me with useless attacks that I'm invulnerable to. That was the first thing. But to more address the question, there is one strike against this game when it comes to building a solo type of player character, and a couple of smaller strikes for it. The biggest strike against it is the fact that experience is not split in this game. When an enemy is defeated or a quest is completed, you get that amount of experience. So like maybe 25 experience is what like an enemy is worth. And if you have a party of 4, each one of the party members get 25 experience. If you only have one character, you only get 25 experience. Which means you don't get the Balthazar effect of being 4 times the level, right? Having 4 times, accumulating 4 times the amount of experience when you don't have party members. That's pretty bad, right? Because that's one of the ways that Balthazar was able to work throughout one of those games. And it's one of the reasons why Balthazar was not able to finish Throne of Baal, right? Because those last 2 encounters were just like too mechanically out of place because he was at the level cap and had been for 3 games.
Yeah.
Now the things for, and we may talk about this a little bit with some of the other questions, is there is enough, and I'll say one other thing against, due to the fact that it's turn-based, you have the action economy really against you. In Baldur's Gate, everything you can do real time, you can move around in real time while other characters are moving. You can eliminate, cast high risk, glass cannon opponents, and you can do that while other people are closing in on you, etc. So the fact that now there's an action economy, and when you're in a fight with 10 opponents, they're going to get 10 standard actions to your 1. That's pretty bad. That's real bad. The things on the pro side is this combat engine is so much more full-featured and exploitable with physics, with all of these environmental effects, with line of sight. There's like this relatively robust suite of magical items that anybody can use. Scrolls appear, at least in this version, and I'm going to imagine it's going to stay this way. All scrolls can be used by all character classes, which means you can have a barbarian, cast a magic missile from a scroll.
Mm-hmm. Great.
It just, this engine gives you a ton of tools to be able to come at things weird ways. And I have done a proof since I played the first playthrough where I took a solo character and I defeated the 3 big goblin bosses that are kind of make up the meat of this game solo. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of time, but in a lot of ways, that's what I was already doing in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, which was pushing that system to its extreme edges and finding out where the edges were and then just coming at it from that angle. So I think that's a pretty comprehensive answer.
Well, on top of that too, right, just to say one additional thing about action economy, right, I didn't play this as a solo character, but you get free action, quick action, it's not what it's called.
Minor action.
Minor actions. Mm-hmm. And then standard action, right? There's a huge amount of throwable items in this game, and so you can almost always use your minor action to do something that impacts either the shape of the battlefield, or to do extra damage, or to just huck something at someone and hit them. And I think that actually has a pretty big impact for solo character play, that if you are funneling all of the items that you can collect in the game into one character, you have a pretty big Swiss Army knife of tools to use every round.
Yeah.
Which is not really the case when you have a full party, because you are using items at 4 times the rate, in fact. Mm-hmm. And so I felt, when we were talking about the game as we were playing it, I felt I was often constrained in my actions a lot more than you were, because I had been using everything in my repertoire every single combat, and which would go over 5 or 6 turns with 4 characters each. That's 20 different actions, and so I burned through a lot of my utility stuff a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that this is there's some more interesting stuff. Tell you what, I've got a big doc full of the questions. Feel free to pick one. I picked the first one.
Well, let's just hit some of these. Let's hit these big picture ones in order. How about that?
That seems good,
because I think they're all good. So these are all from the Discord. Like we said, we told people on the Range Touch Discord, hey, you got any questions about this? We'll answer them. And I think we initially thought, we'll do this at the end and we'll just answer some of these questions. But people ask so many questions, and they're big enough in scope that we can just kind of talk about the game with them. So
yeah.
This is from Aristophales. I don't know. Does Baldur's Gate 3 feel like an evolution or a retread of the previous games, or something else entirely? What do you think?
Evolution's a real packed word there.
Yeah, the previous games felt much like some sort of pre-crab shape, and Baldur's Gate 3 is 100% post-crab.
Mm-hmm. You really put it quite succinctly, as I think you could have in what is a pretty meaty Polygon piece, that review, where ultimately what this game is it is a Larian game with the BG intellectual property that is an implementation of 5th edition rules in a video game. Basically, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So,
it is, you feel like the pitch was, hey, we'll turn 5th edition D&D, the most popular tabletop game in the world, we will turn that into a video game for you, and then we'll do our Larian stuff on top. Oh, what is that? That's the thing for that? Oh, Baldur's Gate? Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate, in the hierarchy of like things of importance, Baldur's Gatiness, whatever that is, doesn't feel like it was number one.
Mm-hmm. It does. I actually, before we recorded this, I watched a couple video reviews of Divinity Original Sin 2. I haven't played Original Sin 2, but I did play the Original Sin original. And yeah, you can definitely tell that it's like the same type of engine. Baldur's Gate is a prettier implementation, a lot funner stuff with the camera. It's a more attractive game, I would say. But it looks like a Larian implementation of, and this is as 5th edition as I think a video game can get to a certain extent. And then and it's in Faerun basically. Now, I think that there's a part of this question we can't necessarily answer, which is how much is this story going to interlink with the tale, like the story of the Bhaalspawn. And that is open-ended based on the narrative I have seen. It very well could be that this is a completely independent story that may reference the Bhaalspawn, or it could be Bhaal is in the mix. It to me is not answered.
Well, you found a reference to Bhaal, right, while you were playing?
I did. It's a little comedic. There is a mischievous character that is posing as Bhaal in a kind of more or less hidden area.
So how about that? That's for you Easter egg people. But yeah, I mean, I think, I guess to their benefit though, think about this: Baldur's Gate 1's not really a Baldur's Gate story until Chapter 2.
That's true.
Up until basically the mines, right? It's like anything could be happening. And you're like, oh shit, there's a conspiracy. So,
and I think in this game we're getting to Baldur's Gate in Act 3. If this early access is Act 1, there's going to be an Act 2, which is getting to kind of the next big place. Moonrise
it's like the
Towers.
road to Baldur's Gate is kind of what it looks like. We get a little bit of a preview in this one.
And then I think the third one, we end up in Baldur's Gate, and there's several characters that we meet that say, "Oh yeah, our end destination is Baldur's Gate. You should see me when we get there." So eventually, that will happen. But I think that's the best answer we can give. It is this kind of, you have a big cauldron of stuff, and you toss in those elements, and this is what that is.
Yeah, but there's very little of what I would consider. I don't know. There's not a lot of like wandering around, and then there's just like some Gygaxian shit going on. Everything feels like it's there for a purpose. It feels very designed to me as far as the encounters.
That's interesting. I think that should I pipe in with a question that's directly about this?
Sure. If you want to.
Yeah. So, where is this? There's definitely a question here. I'm going to Control F, Gygaxian. There we go.
As you do.
Yeah. Sergio asks, does combat feel Gygaxian or deliberately designed as combat? And here's the thing. I think my answer is Gygaxian on this one.
I agree. I think I would make a distinction between, I think the combat feels very dynamic and Gygaxian and weird. It feels like real stuff. I just mean
the world design.
Exactly. Right? There's not like, I don't know, a troll hanging out who just wandered in from somewhere and he's just chilling, and if you make him mad he's going to fight you. Every character and entity has like a little bit of a backstory behind it. It's got a little bit of a connection to some other entity in the world, and I get that, right? This feels in structure to me as if someone played the Sunless Citadel campaign or module, and they were like, "This is what a good D&D area feels like." It's got a little bit of ecology to it. It's got a little bit of like these connections. However, in like the Gygaxian mode, it would have ecology, and the ecology would do the work there. There would be no narrative necessarily that ties everything together. But here it's like anyone you can talk to would be like, yes, it's the Zhentarim over there, and I know all about them.
Yeah, no, I think that this is a really important distinction because, let's take our Otyugh example, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a Baldur's Gate 1 dungeon is Gygaxian because at the bottom of the dungeon there's just going to be an Otyugh because you got to put your garbage somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between that manifestation of Gygaxian versus what the equivalent in Baldur's Gate 3 would be is there would be like dialogue from a goblin on level 2 talking about, oh, there's an Otyugh on the bottom level, and if you 100%.
And we made a deal with him.
Yes,
but don't steal his treasure hidden in his pit. It would, you know what I mean? It would be this like weird quest hooky kind of thing, which isn't necessarily bad, but doesn't feel very natural. No,
there is basically it's too like the undergirding is like this sense of Gygaxianism, but the Baldur's Gate 3 is going to have it a little bit more curated, a little bit. There's going to be a little bit more dazzle and a ribbon on top of it to kind of draw you in that direction. There is an old woman in a shack in Baldur's Gate 3. You talk about her in the review. It turns out that she is a hag. I think that in Baldur's Gate 1, there would be no like signposting there, and she would just live there.
Yeah. And you would have to just do something or complete some sort of weird thing in the world. Or just attack her, and you would find out she was a hag.
Yeah, I think in Baldur's Gate 1, there would be no, because in this game, of course, you can like come to her with your problem, and she's going to have dialogue trying to address your problem. I think in Baldur's Gate 1, it's just like a mysterious old woman. There's no indication whatsoever she's a hag until you attack her, and then she turns into one. I think that's, yeah.
There's a demon hiding in the shack.
But no, when it comes to, I do think that the combat itself feels very Gygaxian, and I would say encounters in terms of not necessarily the narrative setup of the encounters, but like as they happen, feel very Gygaxian to me. There are several bad things, evil things you can do where you decide to betray a large settlement on 2 separate occasions in this early access. And if you do that, you show up with like a bad army and you raid the settlement. And all of the NPCs in that settlement are like enemies now. Half of them are civilians, and they have a permanent frightened condition, and they're running away while you slaughter them. It takes hours because it's turn-based.
Of course.
That is the height of Gygaxian encounter design. Like the Siege of Dragonspear version of this that just happens in the background while you have one like keystone fight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that. Hopefully that answers the question. It does feel dynamic in the sense of every combat encounter. Basically, they've obviously designed these combat encounters in the sense that they've chosen the enemies. But as someone who had to reload a lot of combat encounters, they do play out differently every time.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can kind of clown the AI and do all kinds of stuff. When you and I were playing, I spent a lot of time kicking people off of things, and pushing them, and that's pretty cool. I had a couple combat encounters that really took me like a couple hours each, and I ended up coming up with 3 or 4 strategies of like how I might approach them, and all of those kind of worked, or as I was searching for the appropriate one. So. Yeah, they feel good. None of them felt like, oh, there's an objectively correct answer to how to do this, which I think would be an anti-Gygaxian kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah. This is from Slasher Epic in the thing. Are there any influences in Baldur's Gate 2 besides D&D, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2? I would say Original Sin, probably. Yeah. Original Sin 2.
I think that. And Original Sin probably owes a certain amount of, I don't know, I think that Dragon Age probably influenced Original Sin quite a bit.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I swear there's like a character in this game. I think Shadowheart is very Morgan.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think, we're going to talk about these NPCs, but I think we'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I would say that we've got all of the lore of kind of 5th edition Faerun Forgotten Realms D&D in here. We have those kind of video game traditions. But the most immediate one is, Original Sin. There's just going to be, I think Cameron one of his first impressions was, this is Original Sin 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is from Simitri in the Discord. Do you think that the way Baldur's Gate 3 places an importance on dice rolls that go on within dialogue and combat pays off in any meaningful way? In light of Disco Elysium last year, where failure felt meaningful, my experience of the early access has been that failure is rarely interesting, and seeing the dice roll unfavorably ends up making it feel like I should just reload my last save. I agree with this.
Yeah.
I do not think that failure... I think that this is a almost tone-perfect implementation of D&D 5th edition, because D&D 5th edition rules as written also does not really have any meaningful failure built into it. I think good DMs put that in. I've seen, just to, kind of talk about 5th edition, I've seen Chris Perkins do some of the most talented kind of fail forward kind of stuff in D&D 5th edition.
In spite of the system, using things that are not really in the system in order to do that, riffing off of it, I guess, right? But yeah, I mean, if you read the books as written, there's not a lot of instruction as a DM about how to have someone fail a check and then go about something a different way. Basically, the way that all of the different adventure books handle this is it's like, here are 4 or 5 different pathways. If they fail on one of them, they can use some strategies to find another one. Mm-hmm. I think that is, for the most part, what's going on here in Baldur's Gate 3. It's, if you fail an perception check, well, good luck, buddy. I guess you can fight some goblins. Oh, I mean, here's the most extreme version of this in the game. And this is especially brutal as a solo character, which I might just have to have sorcerers.net up on the second monitor and make sure, just to know where the perception checks are coming up so I can save right before it. Because
hold on. Does sorcerers.net have Baldur's Gate 3 stuff on it yet?
Well, they will by the time we play. Maybe I will be the contributor.
I'm going to be we might have to do it ourselves. I'm going to be so sad if we can't go to official sponsor sorcerers.net and get all of our extra information. But anyway, I'm sorry. So
the most extreme things is you go to the end of a hallway. And it's almost worse because as a player, there's a secret door there, because the way these maps and the camera works is you can literally move the camera through the secret door and you could see the stuff on the other side. You see the little perception check come up. It says failure. You're done. You're locked out of that. You either have to reload and do the check again, or you are permanently locked out of whatever content is behind that door. And in the first 15 to 45 minutes of the game, let's say, you can get a camp follower that has a really interesting, cool ability and interesting lore with it. Utterly, you will miss this character if you do not make a single perception check. It is a dice roll that determines whether you get to consume content or not. It's bad.
That was great, because I think you and I were screen sharing, right?
Yeah.
When that happened, I was like, oh, cool. There's a skeleton guy in here. And you were like, what? There's a skeleton guy. But yeah, I guess the important thing here is that how would you have known that? You just will not experience that. And I don't get a sense that if you level up, you get a shot at it again, right? So Disco Elysium, if you fail a check, you can at least go out and then level up, put more points into that ability, and then come back and get another shot at it.
This is actually more punitive than Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, because in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, you just, even with the lowest of the low wisdom modifier, you could just sit in a place and, rest, and eventually you will spot a trap. You know, I don't think that there are other. Yeah, it's just it is a design ethic. I think that the most favorable interpretation I could give to this kind of design ethic is if you get locked out, you are offered an equally interesting alternative, but there are just so many circumstances in this game where it does not work that way. It is, you just don't get to see content, reload, or wait till the next playthrough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, whatever that is, it's not working right now. And I think it has to do with, again, absorbing some of the assumptions underneath D&D without interrogating why if those assumptions are good or not, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you're right. The cool thing about Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, right, is if you know there's a secret door somewhere, you can just wander around in a little area over and over again until eventually it'll uncover, which is kind of like real life, right? If I know that there's a secret passageway, as I'm always finding in my life, if I know there's a secret passageway, I can just walk around and kind of feel around and try to find it and do it. Until I find it. And you can do the same thing in D&D traditionally, right? This is the kind of classic notion of taking 10, right?
Or taking 20 if you've got hours.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the idea behind that is, how many hours would you have to put in order to equal, getting success at something that you want, right? So if you're making potions or whatever, and previous versions of D&D implemented that in a mechanical way. Whereas I don't think that system is represented in 5th edition anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Sergio asks, when Danny tweeted out, "This feels very Baldur's Gate," what kind of moments was he referring to?
You touch on this in the piece you wrote, but there are several quests that are just so emblematic of this, like, someone is lying to you, I think is the way that that you put it. And when we were recording Mages and Murder Dads for BG's 1, Siege of Dragonspear, and 2, we would often put it as, oh no, the person you thought was bad was actually good, or vice versa, right? Yep. Those kind of a designs, like, I hit a story beat and I said, wow, that is some Baldur's Gate. And also, just there were a couple combats on the, not away from the narrative side. There were some mechanical bits of, like, exploiting something, and I just remembered Baldur's Gate, like, casting fireballs off screen. And there's, like, a very similar vibe to some of the Baldur's Gate 3 combats.
Yeah, I think a little bit of the design, the level design, is a little bit Baldur's Gate-y, and not all of it, actually. There's something that really is lost about not being able to go from, like, screen to screen, all being one continuous world. There's something, I don't know, interesting going on there. But for example, right, we were talking about the hag a minute ago. Well, the hag has a lair underneath her kind of hut, and it's basically like a much smaller Irenicus' dungeon, right? So it's like this big long room, or a big wide room, and it's like 5 or 6 different stations, and each of them just has, like, interesting things to interact with and think about.
Even just thinking about the hag, like, from the cottage to the lair, I can almost close my eyes and see it portrayed isometrically, like with the old style art.
100%,
like,
yeah.
It would feel Baldur's Gate to me. Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, so I think there are some touches. I think that they have paid attention to what makes those games go, and they have melded that with what they're doing already. I just don't know. I don't know which will. I think the Larian mode, obviously, because Larians make it, I think that will win out in the end, I guess is what I'm saying. Because it has to, right? It's a 3D or more 3D-ish. A lot more movement mechanics and things like that. But yeah, there's some Baldur's Gate kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Slasher Epic asked a question about the resting system.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so the question is, how does it handle rests, short, long? How do the abilities work? How they line up? And I think this is the operative question. Is there anything preventing you from just taking long rests all the time, like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2? And do you need camping supplies like in Pillars of Eternity? It is just like Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. You can long rest after every single combat to make sure all of your abilities refresh. There is a system of short resting. You get one short rest between long rests, which resets some abilities, but not all. And it restores a little bit of hit points. There is, in the early access, one area where you cannot long rest. There's another area, like the whole temple. It seems like you shouldn't be able to long rest in there, but you can.
Yeah, there's and what he's referring to is that there's a temple that is overrun by goblins.
Yeah.
And they live there.
Yeah.
And you can just camp while you're in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say the resting is actually more permissive than in Baldur's Gate, because sometimes you would get the dialogue, there are enemies close by, and you wouldn't even see them, right? In Baldur's Gate 3, you can see an enemy, but if you are not in combat and no one in your party is, you can rest. So it's going to be awesome playing a barbarian and just doing rage every single fight.
I will say, though, I guess the bummer about that is that it's a pretty lengthy process to rest.
Yeah, like you're going to see at least 2 load screens because you don't there is no quick rest. Every time you rest, you are teleported to a pocket plane that is your campsite. Even if you're like deep in the Underdark.
Yeah, and I wrote about this in my piece, but the camping mechanic is very cool. I think it's solving a lot of problems. So as we were saying, this is kind of Act 1, and Act 2 seems like it's going to be like the road to Baldur's Gate. And there are people who want to go with you to Baldur's Gate that you're kind of accompanying them. And after you complete like the part of their quest that takes place in Act 1, they just kind of chill out in your camp and kind of wait for you to hit the next flag for their quest, and that's rad. I think that's really good.
Yeah, and it's also the place where all your party members hang out if you don't want them in your party. Like if you've got an extra person, they're just hanging out.
Oh, I persecuted one of mine.
Persecuted?
Yep.
On account of what? Protected ground?
Vampirism.
That is immutable.
Can't do anything about it, even if you're a daywalker.
Yeah.
This is from Andy. He says, I'm still early in Baldur's Gate 1, but one thing I've noticed is that obviously the games like the freedom you have to describe action in tabletop. But the save load cycle provides a different route to that creativity. The possibility space is still finite, but in that Tony Hawk way, you can quickly try the same scenario over and over again with different minor choices and get different outcomes. Is this still in Baldur's Gate 3? How does that feel in a turn-based engine? If not, how are they making failure not suck?
Yeah, so this is really in dialogue with the question about, what is failure look like missing a roll. How does the game deal with it? And so this is one possible response of, well, one way the game is dealing with it is you can just save scum, which is a loaded term, but you can just reload, right?
Yeah, and that takes a lot of time to do.
Sure. Upgrade your computer, y'all. If you want.
I'm playing the thing on Ultra. Like, I'm good. But still, the load times are still pretty rough. I mean, they're not infinitely long, but it is probably 20 seconds.
It's enough to read some tweets. Let's say that.
It's enough to tab out.
So no, I think that this is kind of an interesting question in terms of it definitely. What would you say? I'm thinking about first time playthrough, the hardest encounter in the game in early access right now. How many total combats? How many total times where you engage it and you are level appropriate? Like you have the tools to complete the challenge, to meet it.
Yep.
But how many total attempts would you say this game would ask of you?
I think the hardest, and this is why I was saying at the beginning of the podcast or the beginning of the show, of like things I didn't pursue all the way to their end.
Yeah.
So I would say probably the hardest one, if I had attempted to complete it, would have been fighting the hag, which you can do. And I gave it 1 or 2 shots, and it was just so clearly a thing that would require a lot of strategy and a lot of time put into it. And I knew that like this is the end of the quest, and this is not going to have any bearing on my opinions on this game one way or the other. I just kind of let it go. But as far as like ones I completed that I thought were truly difficult and took a lot of time, probably the Githyanki fight. And so you can fight a group of, I think, 4 or 5 Githyanki. And they're basically, we've talked about on Mages and Murder Dads a bunch of different times how much we both enjoy like the party fight.
Yes.
Which is like an adventuring party, with differentiated roles. It's not, a bunch of goblins or whatever.
You got the fighter, you got the range, you got the ranger, you got the rogue, and you got the mage, right?
Exactly. And so, yeah, the Githyanki party is that. I think it's
I think it's all the things I just listed.
Well, there's 2 kind of fightery people to it.
But one goes invisible, and I don't know if that's because of rogue stuff or just like quaffing an invisibility potion.
It's quaffing an invisibility potion because they go invisible and they come back and they hit you with a two-handed sword.
Gotcha.
And they one-shot my characters. But that probably took me. That was the hardest one for me, and it probably took me 20 attempts.
That's a lot, yeah.
Well, part of the reason just to say that, part of the reason for that is that my party was not necessarily constructed in such a way as to optimally fight that party. Yeah. I will say Rangers are just not that good in this level range of D&D period.
They need a redesign on the Ranger period. This is a little off topic because it's just the difference, especially if you like build a fighter to do range stuff. You get like the action surge of being able to get another standard action. The Ranger doesn't get that.
I get Hordebreaker. I get to shoot people with a much worse arrow 2 times.
Yeah, it's just. I think that if you're a ranger right now, the having the animal companion is just objectively better.
Yeah, I think so too, which is unfortunate. Yeah, I was just kind of going for I tried to play this early access as, what do I find interesting? What do I want to try to do? And, early level D&D, playing ranged is pretty good. Ranger gets some cool abilities, but those cool abilities just did not match up to this particular fight. So earlier when we were talking about kind of the Gygaxian nature of fighting, sometimes you just hit up against a party that's hard to fight.
Yeah.
And good luck, buddy.
So I think to answer this, it's like these kinds of games just require saving and reloading. I don't know what this game looks like from a design perspective of, I want to design a game where it is feasible for someone to play the whole way through and only use save to like save their progress before they go, they leave the game. But I still want tactical combat. That's just like, it is built in the same way Tony Hawk is built in. I don't know if that directly interrogates the way it treats failure.
Yeah. And the thing, I guess kind of the part of the question Andy is asking too, is that in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and this is something that you and I talked about while we were doing it, or while we were playing, is that in Baldur's Gate 2, I could probably attempt to fight 20 times in the amount of time it takes me to attempt to fight 5 times in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes.
Because of real-time combat, all that kind of stuff. Often due just to the way that leveling works and the way the encounters work and the way that of there not being that many levels in D&D, so that there are some levels where the difference between 4th and 5th level is impactful. Those things matter. So some turns would just be cataclysmic turns where I could do absolutely nothing when 3 enemies, 2 ranged enemies hit 1 character and then a melee character finishes them off. And now I'm down 1 character against a party who are all 1 level higher than me. And so I think there are some really, in the early access, there are some stacked encounters where you have to go in guns blazing, full brain power to make sure that you do it optimally every turn. Otherwise, it can really swing. I also don't feel like there's that much swinging that happens the other way. There are very few times where I felt like, oh yeah, after this turn, this combat is over. There will be no more danger left in it. And I think some people enjoy that, the idea that you're kind of always on the edge of your capability. But for me, sustaining that over hours and hours and hours in the short time span that I played it in order to do the review, that didn't feel great, just to be frank.
Yeah.
This is from Moose. How impactful is 5th edition's background system to gameplay in ways that are not dialogue options?
You get 2 skill proficiencies.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming up too often, to be frank.
Even in dialogue, it's pretty infrequent, but Sailor is the only one that gets you a perception proficiency out of all of the backgrounds. So if you don't have a class proficiency in perception, better be a sailor, because that is, as was discussed, the single most important skill check.
Yeah, I was the folk hero background, and that never came up. Like not even once.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, I really like what's the warlock's name?
The favored blade.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
I don't remember any of the side characters' names, but anyway, the warlock, he is a folk hero, and it's really cool to hear them spin that into a narrative for him. I think he has some of the best writing in the game, personally. Speaking of writing, the next series of questions are about narrative. This is from Hypo. Does it feel like 3 is just retreading old ground for the franchise and quote D&D ass stories in general, or is it trying to tell a new story in the same setting that can stand on its own? I think it's a little bit different from the question from earlier because, and I think it's a good one. I mean, I want to reduce it down here a little bit. Is what's going on here to you more than a quote D&D ass story?
Let me give you, I think the least charitable, or I don't know, it depends on how charitable you think D&D ass is, but it sounds pretty derogatory the way we're talking about it. I think that, look, you have a character who is thrust into a group of party members who all have the same problem that was set up by the DM before the campaign ever began. Right? You have literally a waking up on the beach scene, right? And meeting your party members also like more or less on that beach. You've got it's pretty D&D ass. Let's face it. I think the analysis you had earlier of somebody read Sunless Citadel and was like, hell yeah, absolutely. It sounds. I don't think that this is treading new ground narratively.
No. I think it is 100%. I think it is a great tonal match for D&D 5th edition. I think it feels very similar to the writing and published adventures for D&D 5th edition. I think it's actually maybe a little bit more conservative than some of those. And I don't mean conservative in content, but just in the number of pathways they offer, the number of different strategies for doing things. Because what I think is cool about some of the adventures is that they give you, for example, running encounters. Curse of Strahd is a big one of those, right? Where you can encounter Strahd in different situations. The most recent one, I don't have it right here beside me. I'm blanking on the title for it, but it has you encountering this kind of snow creature, this kind of snow shapeshifter, repeatedly over the course of the adventure. Currently, and obviously we only have Act 1, but Act 1 feels like 4 different story beats that are just kind of spread across the map that have a little bit of cross-pollination, but feel very much of their own thing. Right?
Yeah.
And but that allows the Act 1 to stand on its own, but I also don't really know, other than 1 or 2 of these, how they might kick forward into the adventure 2.
I imagine that the devil that we talk about in a couple episodes ago, that was heavily featured in the trailer or whatnot, or the gameplay footage, he's going to mean mug you. He's going to show up and pull a Sarevok on you, right, or a Strahd on you. It's going to be very D&D ass.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah,
maybe that hag will show back up.
Maybe
if you don't kill her. But yeah, it's to answer the question, it's par for the course. I have not been surprised by any narrative or conceptual stuff that has showed up yet. Sergio was asking a similar question about how's the writing. I feel like we have answered that. How does the tone compare to predecessors? So even Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, Baldur's Gate, other 5th edition stuff.
Yeah, so when we talk about tone, that's a lot. In terms of... So one thing I think of in terms of tone is like how serious, how grim dark is kind of the world. So it's like kind of like on a whimsical to Warhammer spectrum, right?
From a Terry Pratchett to a Warhammer.
Yeah. And I think, to its credit, there's still quite a bit of whimsy in this game that is punctuated with like moments that relatively on a relatively well sell themselves as serious. I think that the default assumptions as you're moving through the world is a little bit more on the side of whimsy, a little bit more on the side of silly. There is a gnome that you can launch into the stratosphere by pulling a lever. I don't know if you did that. I did it accidentally first.
I did not, but he's the one that you could see in the content over the or the kind of showed off stuff over the summer. Going on the windmill. Well, that's fun.
But I think that the game does relatively well. Like there's also several moments where torture is on the table. There are several moments where although even the torture gets a little silly.
I didn't torture anybody.
No, but the torturer taught you something.
Yes. There's a what is he a worshiper of Talos? Maybe?
No, not Talos. Oh, different guy.
Not Bashaba.
Not Bashaba.
Someone else. I have it written down, but not in front of me. Anyway, the god of not Ilmater either, but
like the evil Ilmater, the flagellation, but bad.
Yeah, and he's like all sexed up. He's like a sexy torturer.
Yeah,
and he will beat you, and you can choose to perform your flagellation, and if you do it correctly, it is what in D&D we would call a skill challenge. And if you complete it, then you get something. But I wasn't able to convince him that I was actually in pain. So, but this is someone who is torturing someone by like cutting them in the next room, and it becomes like this goofy little comedy moment of skill challenge.
I think that sums up Baldur's Gate overall, right?
Yes, kind of.
Right, because Baldur's Gate opens with a serious economic crisis. Right?
Yeah.
Like the game is selling us this is a serious economic crisis dealing with iron, dealing with mine rights, dealing with a political crisis in the city and the town council. But also there's Goober keeps following you around, right? Like Baldur's Gate holds all of these things simultaneously, and that just is what it is. It doesn't even matter whether it's doing it well, it's just doing it. That's just what it is.
Yeah, and there are some tone. The only time that like tone kind of showed up for me was like that. The torturing guy was one of those. The other one was when Volo shows up, and it's exactly how I did not want it to happen. Just to be frank with you.
Yeah.
Volo in the D&D books is a little bit like a raconteur, right? But
sure,
he's a scoundrel, right? Like he is
and a bon vivant.
Exactly. He's like going around, he's drinking on everyone else's dime, he's writing these guidebooks, telling you a bunch of horse shit, and then it's just lies. And then like giving away everybody's secrets, and Elminster gets pissed off about it, right? That's like the deal. Volo in this is just like a complete goofus. He is one step away from Nuber being like, hey, he's like, I'm learning about goblins over here. Here I am. That's not his voice, but he's like, I'm gonna sing for them because they'll kill me if they don't. And he like goes and joins your camp. I didn't care for that. I was very disappointed in Volo. However, after I helped Volo get out of the goblin camp where he'd been captured, I met a goblin sage who was reading Volo's books.
Yes, in the tower.
And that dude is rad because he was like, yeah, I've been reading these books. It's kind of interesting he's saying all this stuff. And I was like, well, can I read it? And like one of my options was like, well, that's kind of surprising to see a goblin reading. And he gets real pissed off about that, justifiably.
I convinced him to give me the book because I was like, you need to fucking devote your life to worshiping the absolute. You need to give me those books. They're distracting you from your piety.
I didn't have that option, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's all to say. Much like all the other, it is very on par for Baldur's Gate because there's some high notes and there's some not high notes. There is not one unified tone, I would say, throughout the whole thing. Here's some questions that you have categorized as design/miscellaneous. This is from Medium Dragon. I'm interested in some discussion of the way they depict bodies in the game, i.e. only conventionally attractive. or the we're what do you desire half of character creation. Do we think the level of fidelity in character models or the way the camera centers them change the way you relate to the characters, as opposed to the unchanging third-person perspective of BG1 and 2?
So definitely 3 things here.
Yep.
So one is you can't, which I don't know how final this character creation is. Right now, we don't even have like a Fallout 4 facial like adjustments. There's just like preset faces right now. So they may implement more, body diversity in this game, but right now there's one character model for each combination of race and gender, and that is just like what you're stuck with. So if that continues to be the case, I think that will be very disappointing.
So that's the other thing I would say, I guess, alongside that kind of first part of the question is, and this is what I was going to talk about with the companions, is everyone's too sexy. I think the game's too horny.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's controversial about Baldur's Gate and these types of games.
Dang, you agree with me.
Is that true? Is it true?
Well, remember, I tweeted you. It's like, I don't remember Baldur's Gate 1 being this horny.
Yeah, it's true. And maybe I'm overstating. I don't know if it's too horny, but I get the sense, and I understand why this is the case. And I guess I can talk about that trajectory in a second. But everyone is meant to be visually a possible object of desire. And that means that all of the women are traditionally hot and all the dudes are traditionally hot. I saw someone talking about the Druid Lord, maybe on Twitter, as like the himbo druid.
Oh my God.
Right? Because he's just like this buff, strong, like everyone's just hot in the thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a bummer. Like, I don't necessarily like that. And I don't interact with the Baldur's Gate games in the way that other people I have seen interact with games like Dragon Age Inquisition, right? Mm-hmm. As like a dating sim partial kind of thing. Or even Mass Effect. I just don't... that's not why I play these games, and I don't really get that much out of that portion of the game. I find those interesting when they happen as part of gameplay. That's maybe why I like... when we were talking about romances in Baldur's Gate 2, kind of the way that I like those is that they're incidental, right? Like Vaconia or whatever is not a cinematically centered object of desire in the game, right? She's just someone you're on adventures with who, if you are nice to, or actually kind of mean to, depending on, that comes up. And we've had the conversation on the show before about accidentally being nice to people and romancing them. And I think hopefully this game is going a little bit beyond that, but I just don't approach these games in that way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I'm not mad that like this game is including those players. I think that's great, I guess, if that's what you want to do. But it comes at the cost of like aesthetic diversity.
Oh, 100%.
Like
there's
what
no
do humans look like or people.
There's
look
no
like.
Room for a Czar and Montaran in this kind of game.
Yeah, exactly. Who are like, mischievous Zentrum. All the Zentrum are hot too.
Yeah.
Where they show up, right? And so, I don't know. I just feel like I should be able to make like a not traditionally attractive character. And again, right, this is something that, the academic Todd Harper is talking about fairly regularly when it comes to dating sims and when it comes to character creators, so shout out to Todd. But when we even say things like traditionally attractive, right, that's excluding a huge number of people in the world and their bodies and their ways of experiencing the world. And so, I just feel like this is like almost a like Barbie doll kind of aesthetic universe where like everyone is perfect looking. And that's a bummer to me. I would like more aesthetic options in the world of people to look at.
No, I want to make a Balthazar with tiny arms, but like huge tree trunk quads.
He's ready to roll all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I imagine that stuff is coming. I have to think that stuff within their animation capacity will show up, but it is interesting to me how much of this, the conversation that I've seen about this game has been dominated by people talking about like their desire for characters, which is just not how I interact with the game. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But
second part of this question was, or third, maybe, whatever part was the second part of character creation.
I have no idea what's up with that. Do you?
So I do. I have played enough to see it. There is.
Where does it show up?
You have to make certain decisions that I think most players on their first playthrough will like look at those decisions and be like, "That's a bad idea." And if you make enough of them, you start having dreams, and in your dreams, the object of your desire, this kind of platonic ideal of the person you want to fuck, shows up. And you immediately...
That is what it is.
Yeah, you immediately recognize it as that. Okay. And I think that it's also implied that your fellow party members have a similar experience in their own dreams with their own independent objects of desires.
Yeah, and if people don't know what we're talking about, basically during character creation, you create your character and then it skips over to like a second character creator, and you are just kind of crafting another creature that is your desire. And there's no explanation of that at the time.
Yeah, it just says, what do you desire? And you aren't creating a character because
it's just
not
like a doll maker.
Basically. Yeah, it's a doll maker. There's no abilities associated with it. There's no background. It's just the aesthetic options, which entails, okay, well, there's an object of your desire. Is it a dwarf? Is it a drow? I 100% understand why people looked at that, and there's definitely a little bit of undercurrent of like, iffiness.
Yeah, it's weird. It's bizarre, and this is worth saying too, right? Only 2 gender options, right? Male and female for character creation. Same with the other one. So if you have an object of desire that is not normatively fitting into some very delimited categories, this is not helping you in any kind of way or affording you the kind of experience you would want, which is also a problem, I think. And third part of this question here is, does the way the camera, so in conversations, right? Historically in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, it just brings up a dialogue box and you kind of see that over the top of isometric stuff. In this game, there's a cinematic camera that kind of cuts to, 3/4 pictures of people. It is, you played a dwarf, so you experienced this too. I played a halfling, and so it is pretty amazing that the camera does not move based on where you are. And so everyone in the entire game who I was talking to were just looking down out of the screen and not looking at the camera because they were looking down to like match my eye line. And I was looking up, and I would say half of my conversations, which I thought was an interesting touch. But
it definitely does affect it. So you're included in this is that your player character will sometimes react. There will be an animation of reaction to things that your interlocutor will say. So a lot more is implied in that. So it definitely reads that. But no, I think that there's definitely going to be a different relationship that I have to the Balthazar of BG3, and him navigating the story and my interpretation of how he's navigating the story in this game versus BG 1 and 2, where it was purely text, and I could kind of project whatever kind of micro expressions onto Balthazar that I want. In this game, I'm probably not going to have that ability to do that.
No, you're going to make wild cartoonish faces because your protagonist does not speak in this game, and so they emote like a Charlie Chaplin film. Which is good, actually. Like, I think that actually really does work. I really appreciated it. Like, anytime they're surprised, they're like, wow.
Yeah, I will say that there are games like Fallout 4 where you have this fine granular control over your facial expressions that never matters. The only way you ever even see your face is you have to like manipulate the camera to look at yourself. This game, you'd better spend some time getting your face exactly the way you want it, because you're going to be looking at it a lot.
Yes. Every conversation is like shot, reverse shot. There's not, that's the only thing they got going on. I did get to put in the Polygon article. I did get to put a picture of my my character Randy Banjo, like considering something. There's a lot of like doing mind tricks and shit in this game because you have the tadpole in your head and you're got some latent psychic abilities. But yeah, I think it's, overall, I think it's good. I think it also gives a lot more, this is very obvious, but it gives a lot more texture to the characters you're talking to. So even like the goofiest little goblin who I'm talking to is actually kind of a more full character than it would be in, say, Siege of Dragonspear when I was talking to more enemy characters than I would have in other Baldur's Gate stuff. I can imagine the Sahua Gwyn, still can't say it, but
sure.
The lizard folk city or the fish folk city in Baldur's Gate 2, that would be way different in this thing. And getting to talk to the goblins or getting to talk to the what are the fungal people called?
Myconids.
The Myconids. There's Myconids in Act 1 here. Getting to talk to them is a different kind of vibe than it would have been in the other games due to the kind of camera work. So
let me tell you, it is fun talking to Kuo-toa in Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, I didn't talk to the Kuo-toa.
Yeah, they're the hidden little area I was referring to. And down in the Underdark with their lake, having a fun old time.
What are they doing?
They're worshiping Baal, or at least they think they are.
Baal. All right. So this is from Evan. What do you think of the fashion? And then says, additionally, I guess that could be blown out to the visual design in general, like how the Nautiloid looks, the Mind Flayer ship. But I want to know about those puffy sleeves.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the puffy sleeves are on a piece of armor that appears to just be unique to Astarion. I have not found that anywhere else. It's it's basically like custom armor just for Astarion. Similarly with in terms of like what the other characters come with, they all come with like some visual flair, but in terms of like what your character is afforded, if that you scrounge around in the game from vendors and dropping, a little less interesting visually, I think. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, not a lot of armor. I imagine once we get to Baldur's Gate, there might be more clothes and shirts and things like that. But I would say that this game is not really interested in like fashion souls, as it were.
Yeah, a lot of people are complaining about it because a lot of people are experiencing this game multiplayer, which neither of us have done.
No, and to be frank, I have no interest in it, other than like as a fun thing to do.
I mean, we should probably give it a shot at some point, but I'm not super interested in that experience. But one complaint is, we make a party of 4 people. Everybody looks the same.
Well, but I mean, I think the visual design is fine. I think it's a little bit flat. But I think that's also a problem of just the Forgotten Realms, right? This is taking place in the Forgotten Realms. This is something I said in one of the earlier episodes that we did during the Baldur's Gate preview stuff, when I was talking, or we were both talking about accents. There's this like Middle European normative thing going on here where it's like everything is just generic sounding fantasy and everything kind of just looks like generic fantasy, which is kind of why the Nautiloid is cool. It doesn't look or feel like anything else, but like you go in the the temple that the goblins are occupying, and that it looks like a temple from all other fantasy media. You go to the Druid's Grove and it's cool, like it looks neat, but there's nothing that I would say makes it stand out as like, oh shit, this is Baldur's Gate. It's just like, here's what, if you asked me to draw some Druid shit, I would draw some circles and perhaps some stones.
No, I think that it is definitely not expanding the horizons of what I think a abandoned temple, Druid circle would look like. It is reinforcing and drawing upon the things I already know in order to portray those things. It is literally moving in the opposite direction. It's going from the stereotypes I have to the design, and not at all pushing against any preconceived notions I have of what those things could be.
100%. And maybe, I think the best way to read that, or the most positive way to read that, would be to say, this is kind of what D&D does.
Yeah.
To be fair to D&D, or not, to be fair to the game in relationship to D&D, right? It saves basically anything that is aesthetically interesting for level 10 plus.
Yeah.
All right, so you can do planar shit, other nautiloid things, going back to the Nine Hells, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's that's the benefit, the cool thing about D&D. There's a really high ceiling for weird shit in it. But we aren't seeing any of that yet.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say. This is from Ceramic Sun. I want to know how racist it is.
Notice this question was, is it racist?
Yeah, no, this is not a binary, is it racist, yes or no. It is, I want to know how racist it is. I would say it is exactly as racist as D&D in its assumptions, the way it goes about things, the way it thinks about race, the way it thinks about species, things like that. I do get the sense that that the developers of this game have read some of the criticism and are aware of D&D racial hierarchy criticism. We know also, for example, that Wizards of the Coast itself is very aware of this stuff, which is why the new D&D kind of big rules altering book, I forget what it's called, but kind of the follow-up to Xanthar's Guide to Everything, or gosh, I'm forgetting the other.
It's got another proper noun individual guide to everything or something like that.
Yeah, but it's not an adventure. It is a book of rules stuff. It's a woman's name. Anyway, it has new rules for dealing with race in D&D. Right, that obviously doesn't change the basic assumptions there, and it also doesn't change that the player's handbook doesn't have those in it.
Sure.
But they are aware of that, and I think that hopefully whenever D&D releases a new edition or does a complete overhaul, those things will change. I get the sense that the developers at Larian are at least aware of that conversation, and the reason I say that is that there is very little. There are many places in this game for there to be a racial antagonism. And in previous games, there would have been racial antagonism. And I mean that in the sense of like, well, they're a goblin, so they're liars, whatever, things like that. There's really not a lot of that here. And it actually feels weirdly absent because all the other assumptions are there, but they just don't do the thing that they would normally do in D&D. Did you feel that way, not feel that way?
Let me say this. The last character I played was a solo character who was Drow. Mm-hmm. This certainly impacted it. Being a Drow is really different going through this game.
Are they simulating like the Drizzt Do'Urden kind of like no one trusts you for who you are?
Well, there's two variants of Drow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't look super closely at it.
Yeah, so you can choose it's very strange. It's almost like it's like in the same like area on the character creation as like sub race, i.e. for elf, wood elf, half, wood elf,
shield dwarf, hill dwarf.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's like Lothsworn and Celadrine Sworn.
Oh.
And like you can only have by default, you can on any character creation option, you can like check a box to unlock all the colors, right? So like if you want to be a dwarf, there's like the default skin textures. And you could click a box and then be neon green if you want, right? Mm-hmm. Well, on the Lothsworn eyes for Drow, only the Lothsworn can have red eyes. And it's exclusively shades of red. There's something very interesting going on with the lore. Like apparently there is some kind of struggle among the Drow over like the destiny of that of Drow as a whole.
Yeah, I didn't read any of the later books on that.
Yeah,
so I don't really know.
So I don't know, but there are several situations where when I played earlier, I would go up and like interact with people, like the people who captured Lae'zel. You gotta like convince them to run away. You just roll up to them and they run away as a Drow. They definitely they're interacting with you in the town. I think that you kind of like before you gain access to the first town, you kind of quote unquote save them. You take part in a battle out front, and they give you the benefit of the doubt, but they'll still make like comments about you being a Drow. And you also just solely by being a Drow, you have access to like to to certain dialogue options that may have a tag either drow your race, or it might have a tag like Underdark because that's where you're from.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess just as racist as D&D is, probably with all of the same unexamined assumptions. Then,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's where it is. Slasher Epic says this is more speculative, but do you imagine the game will get mod support and map tools to the same degree Neverwinter Nights did? Do you think that will impact the community? I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know what modding looks like for Original Sin 2. I imagine that this will have the exact same modding capability as Original Sin 2.
I would need to look into that. I seriously doubt Original Sin 2 has the mod community Neverwinter Night did, because Neverwinter Nights, like, they released developer tools like with the game. Basically, you could create your own custom, because like the big push with Neverwinter Nights is that you could basically play DM in that game. So big question. I think that this game's going to get 10,000 times hornier if they open up mod support.
Skyrim
make of that what you will.
And we've got what appears to be a list of miscellaneous jokes that people have made. Jordo says, how many wives are in the game so far, and are there plans to add more later? And I'm assuming that Jordo means romanceable characters. I think there are 5. Is that true?
Sure, I haven't romanced anybody. Although I do think that there was one dialogue option where I could have propositioned somebody, but that was not the character I was playing.
Let's run down the companions real quick, because we haven't really talked about it. But
in order that you meet them, first, Lae'zel from the introduction. You're separated, but you can reunite. Githyanki, fighter.
Shadowheart is the second one.
Shadowheart is so Lae'zel, cold-hearted, evil person. Talks about how murder is good, culls the weak, right?
Yep.
Shadowheart, evil cleric. Also, very like Adam's Family evil. Like, you'll be in a dungeon that's like dark and dreary, and she'll be like, oh, I really like this. It's a really dumb version of evil. It actually makes me angry that sometimes like evil characters in these games are literally like the Addams Family. Like, ooh, this torture chair is so comfortable.
And she's a cleric of Shar, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Next, probably meeting Gale next, depending. You can easily miss Gale, though.
Yeah, I didn't know that you could recruit people and send them directly to camp, so I met him, and I was like, well, I'll see you later. Party's full. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Gale, kind of a little bit of a goody two-shoes wizard, but with a magical item, a desire for magical items in order to consume them. He's got some kind of problem there. And finally, oh my gosh, the name of this character is the one...
not Azrael, but...
Astarion.
Astarion, yeah, I have a hard... I always want to say Astaroth, but that's from Soul Calibur.
Yeah, how would you describe Astarion?
Astarion is a vampire thief, and he's like a real... he's a lot to manage. You gotta really manage him, and I immediately was not into that, and I banished him from my camp for being a vampire. I found... He'd been going out and killing animals, and I found some of those while walking around. And then I woke up one night at camp, and he was leaning over me trying to drink my blood. And I was like, Astarion, what are you doing? And he was like, well, I just need a little bit of blood. I'll feel so much better if I have some blood. And I was like, get the hell out of here, dude. Weirdly enough, he didn't leave then. I found a bounty hunter later who was hunting for him, and I was just like, yeah, I know where that guy is. He's at my camp. Get him out of here.
It's really interesting because before... It's pretty obvious Astarion's a vampire. He literally takes damage from moving water.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Takes damage from moving water. But after, if he is outed as a vampire, he then gains a once per encounter, like, vampiric bite ability that's really good. Like, drains health. And, like, changes him. And then the final person whose name we had forgotten, and I totally understand why, is Will with a Y and no I.
Yeah, that's right. He's the best one. He's cool.
Will, yeah, human warlock, folk hero, interesting. Kind of the nature of his pact is a secret. I like it how that
I learned it.
Oh no, it's a secret at the beginning initially.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You
But
have to,
I do like it.
talk to him quite a bit to get it out.
I do like it that, like, as a player in Dungeons and Dragons, I know that all warlocks have a pact.
Yeah,
Right? That is what separates them from wizards and sorcerers. So I know that. As individuals in Faerun, you meet Will. I guess you know he's a warlock, right? I don't know where. Maybe you don't know he's a warlock. Maybe I only know that because I can look at his character sheet, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're just like, okay, you do magic, sure. But you would think that if it was ever said, "Oh, you're a warlock," everybody would know. Oh man, well, what's your pact? Who are we signing up with here?
Yeah, his story is super cool. So he has one eye, or he has a like an artificial eye.
Yeah,
in one socket, and basically he was left for dead after did some drow leave him?
some kind of problem.
I think it was drow who left him, but he anyway, was left for dead, and lost his eye, and he met this woman who like helped him learn all these powers and do all kinds of stuff, and eventually she was like, yeah, I'm a demon and if you make a pact with me, I'll give you even more power and you can go get revenge. And so she replaced his eye with like a magical eyeball that like she can also use sometimes. So yeah, he's really cool. I think he's got a great story. I think the other characters probably have really cool stories. I like Lae'zel. I made enough decisions where Lae'zel like kept coming on to me. And I don't know what I was doing to make that happen, but somehow that was occurring. Shadowheart's got she's got some sort of weird, mysterious magic going on that she keeps trying to keep hidden. Asterion is not in my camp, is gone, probably doing something evil somewhere. I don't care for him, but I like the companions so far. I think they're cool. I'm interested to know more about them. But I don't know if there are going to be more or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there will be more, and I think the big question for me is whether or not we will be able to meet some companions that are not. All of these companions also have the tadpole in their head.
Yeah.
And they all have like these fleshed out stories. I would really like just to have some companions in Baldur's Gate that are like, hey, I'm a good fighter if you need that for your party,
Yeah, I would like recruitable, just functionally character created dudes.
Yeah.
I think that would be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Next question. This is from Brian Taylor, who did the song you heard at the beginning of this episode.
Ooh.
Brian asks, why is that one lady green?
Githyanki.
She's Githyanki. They're green.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, you know what time it is?
Ooh, what time is it?
It's time for the Elminster Minute. Yeah, so Sergio asks, have you seen Elminster? And, well, Danny, maybe you remember who Elminster is. Elminster is a wizard. He has traveled all over Faerun. Of course, this game takes place in Faerun, like the other Baldur's Gate games. He was young once. He is now old. He used to travel from the Forgotten Realms into the physical world to meet with the creator of the Forgotten Realms or the interpreter of the Forgotten Realms, Ed Greenwood. He showed up in the other Baldur's Gate games in various capacities in order to kind of be an old hooligan and tell us stuff. And so the big question, obviously, is Elminster in Baldur's Gate 3? You would expect him to be. We've already gotten Volo. They always have this kind of relationship. And that's all to say, I'm here to tell you that Elminster has not yet appeared in Baldur's Gate 3.
I have read correspondence.
This is from Mary. How do the guns feel?
There are large artillery batteries on the Nautiloid ship that are blown up by a dragon, but you don't get to touch them. There are other artillery batteries you get to go up to, but you can't actually interact with them. So, to be determined.
1 star. Ainda says, that vampire guy seems like he needs to chill out around people he just met like a day ago. Can you tell him to chill out? I did tell him to chill out.
You can definitely tell the vampire guy to chill out. I think I almost want to, on my current playthrough, just like when he's sucking my blood, instead of doing the thing I did the first time, which is like, no, you can't. Just be like, okay.
Yeah, we're cool.
Yeah, sure.
We're cool, Asterion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's all the questions we got. Is there anything we didn't get to that you wanted to say about Baldur's Gate 3?
No, I think that I really liked just going through the questions because there were several topics that I wanted to really get into, and the questions afforded us the opportunity to talk about the things I thought were important. And I also didn't want to like get too deep into any of the specifics because we're probably going to be talking about it. Like, I'm sure there are going to be tweaks in the final release, but I am pretty confident that I have experienced Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3, like more or less as it's going to exist.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, well, so as we've said before, we will play this whenever it comes out in full release. If they trickle out some more of it, or if they do a major update where there's like another act, I might play that. But I don't have plans to like you were saying before. If they release some more classes or something, I'm not replaying this intro.
Yeah, no. And even if it's another act, I feel like I know what this game is. Yeah. I feel like I might just wait till it's out.
Yeah. Well, we'll play it by ear. You might hear from us again about it. You might not.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, I think we have committed to playing Disco Elysium. You're trying to figure out a schedule for that, how to make that work.
Yeah.
So those episodes will probably start coming out, I would say, the end of November, something like that, very beginning of December. That's probably only going to be 5 or 6 episodes. It's probably going to be pretty quick.
It will go pretty quick, yeah.
But that will be the next Midges and Murder Dads game, and then we'll kind of play it by ear after that. As always, if you like this type of show, if you're hankering for the Midges and Murder Dads feel and you're not getting it in your life, you can listen to me and Michael Lutz doing something basically the same with the Fallout series. We've already done Fallout 1 and 2, and we're working on Fallout 3 right now. That's Too Much Future. That's also here on the YouTube or at youtube.com/rangetouch, in case you're listening.
A lot more gun feel in those games.
So much more gun feel, and laser gun feel, and nuclear gun feel, and all kinds of stuff like that. If you like the show and you want to support it, and you want to support all the other stuff we do at Range Touch, you can go to patreon.com/rangetouch. The link is down in the description below this episode. That helps us pay for hosting. Obviously, it doesn't matter for YouTube, but if you want to listen to it as a podcast, it helps us do that, and helps us make all the other stuff that we do as well. At $5 a month, you can get access to our monthly podcast that we do, where we're just kind of shooting the shit, talking about it. Speaking of, we need to record that for this coming month. But it's all there. It really helps us out. It allows us to do stuff, and it allows us to do things like pay for that cover of a song from a Coen Brothers film that is based on Baldur's Gate. That kind of stuff that it's good to spend money on. Thanks again to Brian Taylor for putting that together. And thanks to all of you for listening to the show and being kind of intermittent listeners. I'm actually hugely surprised. I look at the stats for this, every now and again, and we have new listeners. I'm not exaggerating, every single day.
We have old listeners just who fire this shit up at episode 1 when they need to do a road trip for some reason.
Yeah. And so we appreciate that. Thanks so much for doing
Which is awesome. Great.
Yeah. If it's your first time through, if your first time hearing this, make a little comment down there and say first time through, first time, long time. And then, let us know, if you're on your 5th listen and you're hearing this, let us know. I'm curious about that, but we want to say thanks, and we'll be back in a month or so, give or take, with Disco Elysium.
Yeah. Ciao.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. 1 second, please. Please, Mr. Saravah. I don't wanna. Please don't shoot me into Baldur's Gate. Please, Mr. Saravah. I don't wanna. Please don't shoot me into Baldur's Gate. I sweat when they call me Gorian's Horde. Magic missiles and a flaming sword. Gathering parties and adventures will go. Possessed by bandits and their 1,000 arrows.